Welcome to South Florida, the bottom of the clip of the Gunshine State. One of them boys still blowing in that way. Big plate, get it for the 18 if you straight. Get cake and stop hating, it's the motto of the state. A lot of fakes, but it's still real around here. That foreign talk, that can get you.
All right, man, we back here, Crib Talk. Sitting here with a doctor, right?
Yes, sir.
We never had no doctor. We trying to get my homegirl Didi to come on here. She's a doctor. She haven't came yet. So Didi, Chad done beat you here. So you a college football fan, right? You watch college football. College football is changing drastically with the money and the transfer portal. You agree with, we usually ask people this, see how they feel. You agree with the transfer portal?
No. I like the transfer portal idea, but I think, 365 days a year, it's absolutely crazy. And I mean, so, the thing is, my son may have a favorite college football player, and you try to buy his jersey for him, right? And I mean, you look next week, the kid's out of the he's in a transfer portal, and so it's hard to tell your kid that. I think, but on a much larger scale, the NIL thing I think is good. I think being a former player and seeing. I was a walk-on, and so I didn't even get to eat with the team back in those days.
Really?
I was telling, it was crazy. I had to eat. I had to get my own food, and everybody else is eating steak for dinner. So it was funny, but so I think the NIL is a great transition, and I do think players should get paid for their performance and all that. But the transfer portal itself, 300. There needs to be limits on when you can transfer. Right. That's all I'm saying. I think at some point. You need to know who's on Miami's roster, right? They need to know. You need to know as a fan, but as a coach, right. I mean, the coaches are out here wondering, is 66 going to be my tackle this fall, or is he going to be Florida State's tackle? And what do you think? I don't think they're waiting. I think what's going to happen is what is happening is the teams are doing what's best for them. And they're not going to wait for a 20-year-old kid to make that decision because it's so easy. The process of getting the transfer portal is just you walking down to basically the office and getting in the portal. It's not even like there's nobody there with picketing, protesting, saying stay, none of that. The decision is in the hands of these kids, and they're 19, 20, 21. Yeah. And some of them are making their own grave, but some of them are benefiting from it. Yeah. The part we talked about this, we saw this coming a long time ago. The one part that we didn't factor in was that the bigger schools would take the smaller schools better players. Like we see Alabama took Georgia Tech running back, and he's in the spring game and running all over. I didn't factor that part in that the bigger schools would actually take. We always looked at it as if a kid get mad, he jump in the transfer portal. But now the NIL is turned into business. It's turned into something different. And it's probably a little bit of both. Right. And I do think, for example, if a coach loses, if a university loses their coach, you should be allowed to transfer. I mean, they recruited you there, and that's only fair. And I think those type of issues are one thing. And I do think that if a player finds a better opportunity, then man, that's great. But this thing has gotten out of control. I mean, when you look weekly in the news, there's every week tons of kids that are leaving and going other places. There's absolutely no downtime on it, and I think that's what my concern is for the coaches. Right. They need to know who to recruit when, right? And I think that there needs to, at some point, you need to know who your team is. Like who's going to be here on Saturday? So that would be nice to know, But I think because the way that it's been. It's just it's all the way, and it's through the year. They may play 3 games and decide I don't want that. I'm not going past that 4th game. I'm getting out of here, So
it happened to Miami last year. A kid stopped. They stopped him from starting, and he just jumped in the portal mid-season. I mean, so I don't know if they ever put any brackets on or any time frame, but it's definitely Wild West now. They're allowed to do whatever they want to. Everybody talked about Michigan State flipping their roster last year. But nobody talk about the 27 kids that left Michigan State. They only talk about the 40 they brought in. But 27 kids jumped in the portal.
Some basketball teams have lost their whole team. They've lost their whole team. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why the coaches get paid the big bucks. But Chad here, because Chad has something that all college football across the college, NFL, any level of football, we've all seen ACL tears. And
ACL tears can happen during the game, at practice, getting out the bed. But you've invented something that can help people actually recover pretty fast. Explain to the people exactly what it is.
Yeah, well, it's called the Fertilized ACL, the Lavender Fertilized ACL. But basically, in a nutshell, we found a way about 4 years ago to take stem cells from your own shin bone and use those in the ACL reconstruction. Kind of make like a putty that goes next to the graft. In addition to that, though, we put an internal brace, which is a synthetic suture tape into the knee, so it makes the knee stronger. So we're adding two things: biology to make it heal better, obviously, and then the strength of the repair with the reconstruction with the brace.
How long did it take you to come up with it?
Well, it wasn't easy, right?
No,
So I mean, that's part of the problem is that. When we look at ACL reconstructions and they haven't changed really, we were talking before we came on 20, 30 years really. And so that's why I think there's so much excitement nationwide about our technique and the studies that we've done is because it's a new look of adding biology and making the knee stronger, obviously.
Right. So how many of these have you actually done?
We've done about 200, but then there's also surgeons. A big part of what I'm doing, actually why I'm here right now on my way to Naples, is training surgeons, doing video technique surgeries, and then also just going around the country and training surgeons and telling them about our research. So all of those surgeons, have done the procedure and things too across the country. So it's hard to track an exact number. We have good 2-year follow-up though on our patients. 94% of them have returned to play, and in our clinical trial, which is the highest level of evidence you can get, they're about 80% at 12 weeks. Just 12 weeks, they're about 80% of their full recovery, which is really dramatic compared to the normal 6 to 9 months that you would test somebody at.
So 8 to 12 weeks.
Yeah, 12 weeks.
Before they can fully?
At 12 weeks, their knee tested is at 80% compared to their normal knee, which is dramatically improved. You've seen people probably in braces for 12 weeks, right?
Right.
And so, some of the stuff that you'll see out there, we really like them to be jogging or, running by about 8 weeks, and we've really allowed all these patients to return at their tolerance, and so really getting some good longer term information. Because here's the thing, this was once, thought of as a career killer, right? Well, when we look at the most recent literature in the last couple of weeks, and so, at 3 years out, only 30% of NFL players are playing after an ACL. And that's so 1 out of every 3 that tear their ACL, if you look at them at 3 years out, they're still playing. So that's really not good, right? So we have to change that.
Right. So over the years, ACL surgery has gotten better. It has gotten better, and we see players come back and get back on the field. But you said 3 years out.
Yeah, so what I'm telling you is we think it's gotten better. We have great fixation devices, all these things, but the literature on a standard ACL is not very good, right?
Gotcha.
So when we look at the results, only not our technique, but only 60% out there are going back to their sport, and 1 out of 3 NFL players at 3 years still playing is not good. So that's the whole reason we're spending so much time on our technique, because we think that we can improve on those numbers hopefully in the future.
Yeah. So you say you're actually training? You're training people to actually do
procedures? Yeah, all over the country. We do seminars, and we'll even do labs for surgeons and things of that nature, because we have, like I said, good 2-year follow-up now, and that's being published. And so that's really kind of, there's a lot of interest. We've heard from so many people, just organizations, teams, and just athletes. And that's the thing you mentioned. It can affect anyone from obviously high school football players, Miami football players, to your uncle that's skiing, right? So it's one of those things that just can affect everybody. But the main reason for our research and things is because of the player that's at Miami that could go and get drafted, right? We want someone like that to have the best. That's why we spend so much time on the research side, because we want them to have the best opportunity to have the greatest longevity, and so that's why we have to do the research. I'm
sure they do also.
Yeah.
So when how does it work? Somebody tears the ACL, right? And what they usually go to their family doctor, and he refer them to somebody?
Yeah, so a lot of times that's what happens. Major universities, pro teams will have a team doc that will handle a lot of their things. But what we found, is patients get on social media now,
Really?
right? And they look at things and they do their own research on the videos that are out there and the publications that you do. And sometimes they'll call me and know as much about my procedure as maybe anybody,
Right.
and so it's really interesting. We live in a world now with social media and YouTube, just like what you're doing, right? So people can get so much more information than one that they could get 20 years ago. So inevitably, we get a lot of calls from folks that have surgery scheduled elsewhere, and then they'll call and they'll travel in for their surgery, and so that's really common actually.
Because what they look and see that you say they can be back faster.
Yeah, and they even contact our patients. So I mean, it's crazy out there. Like the video that I sent you on YouTube. There's patients that are on that video. Or that have been quoted in an interview, and they'll find them on social media inevitably, and they'll be texting them like, were you really running at 6 weeks? And so the funniest thing that happened was we had an article come out. It was in the Sporting News. The title of the article was, jogging or running, I think, after 6 weeks after an ACL.
Right.
And so somebody gets on social media and said, there's no way this is true. And so, another patient got on there, a patient of ours got on there, and he posted himself running, and he said 6 weeks out, and it wasn't even anything to do with the article. He was like 6 weeks out, mic drop, you know. So social media has changed everything for not just not just sports in general, but the medical side of sports.
Right. No, it's definitely made the world smaller. It definitely, if somebody can get in touch with you, then get in contact with your patients. So have you done any NFL players or?
So I can't talk about specifics of
Really?
Players,
But they're on social media.
Yeah, but so you can't really, but I will say, so we have done professional players in sports, in different sports, and those type of things. And there's a lot of interest, not just in professional sports on what we're doing, but I think just across the globe about trying to improve ACL reconstructions with the type of techniques like I was telling you, with the biologics and the strength of the ACL internal brace. And we think that that's going to lead to better long-term outcomes than what I was telling you about earlier, And so people always ask, well, you think everybody's going to be doing your technique in 2 years, right? Or those are hard questions to answer, but I will tell you that there's no question that people will use stem cells, biologics, trying to use your biologics to improve your healing. And then also, I think it makes sense to use an internal brace and make your knee stronger, So all that matters. The rehab matters, all those type of things.
You play football?
Yeah.
Where you played at?
So West Virginia, I was a backup long snapper up there in 2000.
At the University of West Virginia?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you played for 1 year?
I was there for 3 years, and so that's really what started my interest in this, because I would see guys that would get hurt, and when they came back, that from the ACL, they weren't the same player they were before they hurt it, and you've seen that, right? And so, when you talk about, I was telling you, I can remember like it was yesterday. I was watching the national title game, and Willis McGahee got hurt, right? So you see these injuries happen. And the misconception is that everybody just does great, but that's not true, So I mean, that's just not true. So we got to get better, and that's why that's why I developed the technique. That's why we spent so much time at Marshall researching it, because and really we want to give patients really good data to look at, And that's why we do a lot of the videos, like showing athletes how they're running, how they're doing, and put that out there, because that's what patients want to see, athletes.
So when you're sitting here and you're doing all this research and developing it, what's the goal? Like at the end, when you die, what do you want people to say? What about Chad?
That's a good question I get asked sometimes. But I really think at the end of the day, you have to have a passion to help athletes for what I do. So when I do surgery, it's always about that patient that day, or when people come into our clinic, it's that patient, that athlete, and really relating to them, because you're a former player and you know what it means to them. And I think honestly, it's just more than anything, honestly, just trying to progress the field forward, if that makes sense. So that's my goal.
So it's not a selfish thing. It's not we did this.
No. I think And to be honest, it's anything but that. You know, I've had a team of probably 10 to 15 people that have helped us on these techniques and figure things out. This is not easy. And we still continue to look at things. That's what I'm down here now,
Right.
you know, on my way, is we'll get in the lab and look at things to change or what's working, what's not, you know, those type of things. And so I think that's the way. It's been such a team approach. There's been a lot of people that have been loyal from day one. You know, we really, like, we got at a table like this between surgeries and just started drawing out just different things on a piece of paper.
Right.
And that's how this started.
Yeah.
And so to see where it, you know, grew and went national and all these things with all, you know, sorts of interesting things. You'll get called from everybody about this. But I think, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
And I think the future, you know, what I'm doing now is we're looking at bringing in some of the biggest sites in the country and doing a multi-center trial on the technique.
Okay.
So that's really what we're looking at next, is bringing in the biggest sites and get a ton of patients, ton of athletes at different varying levels of sport, you
Right.
know, in different sports. And because our initial study was about 60 patients, you know, and like I said, I probably have data on 200 patients outside of that study.
Right.
So.
Got you. How many surgeries can you do in a day?
In a day, well, it depends on where you're doing the surgery,
Uh-huh.
you know, your team, all those kind of things that are with you. It's a team approach. Generally, we'll do, and it depends on the surgery. So,
Yeah.
you know, I would not do more than 2 ACLs in a day generally. I mean, you could do 3. You could do up to 8 surgeries to 10 surgeries if they're smaller surgeries and you're at an outpatient surgery center, you know.
Right.
So it really depends. It varies based on surgery. And the complexity, and I always schedule on the lighter side because, you know, for me, I like to be focused on a smaller amount of surgeries.
All right, that was gonna be my next question. Like, what type
Yeah.
of focus go into pre-game before you walk into a surgery? Like, do you get yourself psyched up? Are you studying? Like, what goes into it before you walk in there and you got to go inside somebody's body?
That's a great question. That's one of the best questions that I've ever been asked, and it's not. I treat it like a football game.
I was gonna ask you that, and I didn't want
treat
you
it.
to.
I treat
ask you
it.
that.
So you know, I start with, and I'm not joking. I start with film study.
Really?
You know, yeah. So I mean, I think a lot of it is we make a lot of video techniques, but I also will go and look at newer techniques on videos, things that the night before, the 2 days before. You know,
Right.
because you got to call and get your implants in and those type of things if you're doing an unusual surgery. So it really starts though for me when I see that patient in clinic. Okay, here's what your problem is, and here's, you know, no surprises on the OR day. Here's exactly what we're going to do.
Right.
And you go over that with them. That's a great question because, you know, and I'll tell you this, it's like,
Because it's so serious.
yes,
a football
it
game
is.
is a game.
You have to,
You're talking about
like for example, during the week, I won't go out to eat. I'll sit at home. I hydrate the night before surgery. Lots of water. You know, all that kind of stuff. You have to eat well, get enough sleep.
Right.
It's no different than an athlete at the peak performance. You know,
Right.
we're getting a lot of information. I'm sure Miami's doing this, but we're, you know, a lot of places across the country are looking at athletes, and they got GPS monitors and wearable devices, and
Right,
you know,
right.
looking at their hydration levels. And I mean, that's the next like money
It
ball.
is.
You know, that's
Yeah,
what
I heard
people
somebody
talk
say
about.
the
That I
other day,
mean,
and I didn't realize that was going on.
yeah. So with a lot of the technology that we have now, you know, that's
Yeah.
and it's no different for a surgeon. You have to be at your peak performance every single day.
Have you ever opened somebody up and it didn't look like what you expected it to look like, and like the game plan got to change? You're like, wait a minute.
You know,
or every time it looks the same.
Well, with anatomy's the good thing is anatomy very very rarely changes,
It does,
right?
okay,
So
gotcha,
you know,
gotcha.
we're blessed with
I was
that. So
wondering,
yeah.
okay.
But the good thing is also some of, you know, MRIs have gotten so really good that it's very rare that you're going to have a
Oh,
surprise.
because you can see.
Yeah, the
Gotcha.
MRI images tell us everything.
I got you.
So
I
they,
got you.
you
So
know,
it's no surprise.
yeah,
What
and
you're looking at.
experience. You know, I have to say that too.
I got you.
Yeah.
No, but anything you want the people to know, because we have 400,000 followers, but most fans, athletes, like anything you want them to know where they come follow you.
Yeah, so, you know, it's Chad Lavender MD on Twitter, YouTube. I don't have that many followers, obviously. Maybe in 10 lifetimes I get that many followers, so congratulations, and you're doing a great job. So, it's Chad Lavender MD on Instagram. But in general, I think if you have the thing about it is it may be 6 months from now somebody looking on the internet for ACL injuries,
right,
and they might see this, and they reach out. So it's not something, because people don't really want to think about it when they're doing great, but then the second their son or daughter injures their ACL, that's when they start searching for things, and that's when they find these type of videos.
Before you get out of here, what is the ACL tear? Because when it happens, a lot of times people come back and they realize they can run forward, but certain things they can't do. Explain that really fast when you get out of here.
Really good. See, that's another great question, and you picked up on it. So it's you can go forward. So the ACL is a ligament, though, that it not just front to back stability, it provides rotational stability.
Gotcha.
And so when an athlete comes back from an ACL tear, if they're not fully rehabbed, or if something's wrong with that graft or whatever, they might have pivoting or cutting issues.
Right.
And that's why they need the surgery in the first place, is because for a high-level athlete, they have to be able to pivot and cut, and that's when you feel that instability. And we battle through a lot of those things, because even with our biologic technique and the brace, the knee is strong, but you still have to really relearn how to be active. And what we're doing is we put them into a virtual reality, matrix, basically like a PlayStation Move type thing, and look at their reaction levels. So what I was telling you about the functional testing we do, we really test their function. How are you moving back and forth? Not just how fast you're running or can you jog, but really looking at their mechanics, the biomechanics of what they're doing, because that's, you hit on it. It's not just whether they can go out and run straight ahead. And that's what I go out and I watch these athletes, because I want to see, how do you do in some of the videos I showed you, how do you do when you're trying to make a cut and you're a running back and you're trying to hit a hole, right? Because that's the reality of what they have to be able to do. That's what's going to make them money, scholarships, whatever. And so that's our goal, is to improve that. And that's a variety of ways. It starts the day of surgery, but it doesn't end there, right? So it's sometimes the average return time is 6 to 9 months or a year sometimes. So we're trying to cut that down to 4 months with our future research. If we can show safely, hopefully, that by 4 months they could go back, that'd be great. Right now, I haven't returned anybody before 6 months, even if they've been ready. So, but
man, I thought that was gonna be the last question, but I got one more. So a lot of times when the guys come back, right, they don't look the same at first. What is that? Is that them coming back too fast, or is that what is that? They feel that they're okay.
I tell you, I'm gonna have you help me with my research. You know all the things. You really obviously are well educated with this, and I think so. That's the point that I was making about. We know that at 3 months in our study that they looked good functionally, but when you get back out on the field and the lights are on, and you really have to, in an environment, be yourself, that's when they struggle. And you're right. They have to reacclimate psychologically to that too. So it's not just, I bring you in, I do your ACL, and it feels good at 6 months, and you pass your test in a controlled environment. You go back out on the field, though, it's much more than that. So now, people coming at you and high level, right?
And they don't care.
And they don't care about your knee that's got a brace on it. And and that's what happens inevitably, is that it'll take a season or so before they become, if they become that level. And it's like I told you, the misconception is that they're just going to automatically get back to that level. And you got to ask yourself, you got to ask yourself, if somebody for the Dolphins tears their ACL and they get back, what career would they have had if that didn't happen to them? And so we spend a lot of time on preventative mechanisms too. Because let's say, for example, they made X amount of money in their career. Would they have made X times 2? It's hard to say. And so you make a great point. It's not just, that's why I started off with the whole, new research that we've seen it come out, because it's not just do they get back for 6 months or a year, but are they back at 3 years and still making money? That's what needs to happen, and that's for these athletes. That's what we need to improve on. So that's why our research is gotten a lot of interest, actually.
So what we're looking at is that they passed the test and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now somebody cleared them to play.
Yes.
But then you're saying that there's other things that we need to take into consideration before, because we see it all the time. Oh, he's out there, but nah, that ain't him.
He's
And
now
then next year
backup,
he comes-
right? he was your starting tailback, and now he's running second team.
Right.
And it's not protective. It's not because anybody's protecting him. It's just because you know it's that's a common theme, is that when they get back out, they just don't function in a totality of that manner. And I think it's psychiatric. Like, we know that the psychiatric aspect of how do you feel about your knee, that's important. You know, it's not just how does your knee look, and we MRI our patients and post-op and all that, and they can have a great looking MRI, but sometimes psychiatrically, you know, they don't feel like their knee when you score them. You know, how do you feel about your knee? They may not be where you want them to be. So. So that's something that experience can help with. So there are, you know, that's why you're saying maybe in year 2 they get back to that role, that they were supposed to have, and that's the goal. Is that we know that some patients. Our goal, though, honestly, is to identify the patients that could come back earlier than 6 months safely and allow them, because that's the time frame that's important. If you tear your ACL in spring or in off season, you know, the workouts the NFL has, the off season conditioning. Could you ever get back to where you could help that team on a playoff run or in a BCS run, or I call it BCS, but it's, you know, the college football playoff run. But anyways, could you get back in 4 to 6 months and be an active member participant?
And it's different for different people. Is it threshold for pain?
It is. I think it's a threshold just for like how they deal with the injury, and then also we feel like it's really important early on. That's why we test you in our studies really early, because we feel like that if you need to be at a certain level at 12 weeks to be back at 6 months as tolerated. And so those are great questions, but you're right on. I mean, I think those are the main things. And you know, I know that this is a sports show, but there's not any person out there that's watching your show that's not been affected or known somebody affected or their team's been affected, right? We were having a great season, and then he went down with an ACL. So it's something that everybody out there is interested in. Yeah.
Well, listen, man. Anytime you're free to come here and talk about this, and if I ever tear my ACL walking up the stairs, I know the call swing.
Yeah, hey, that's right. And if you have anybody that, you know, or if you ever want to talk just about an injury, you know, call me. I mean, I can Zoom from the house, and we can talk about just any injury that you guys want to know more about.
Oh, that's what's up.
I do that a ton, you know. So yeah, tell us about what's the normal recovery for player X's.
I got you. No, I got you. You part of the team now.
Yeah.
All right, appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me.
It's gonna take 3 motherfucking days, and that's what this nigga wants. Shit. I say, big time players